And I wonder how many of you here would suggest that it would be a good idea for the Oxford Union to eliminate the democratic election of its leader and instead have somebody just rule over them for as long as they would like.
To continue the case for side opposition, I call on Ambassador Kurt Volker.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure for me to be here, although I fear I have wandered into the wrong debate, because I thought we were here to debate the proposition, which is, has liberal democracy failed the global South? And I have not yet heard a single argument against democracy. I have heard complaints and grievances against the West, or the North, or the United States, against colonialism. I've heard about injustices that take place in a variety of countries, but not a single argument against democracy. In fact, some of the arguments made by our colleagues in favor of the proposition were actually calling for better democracy, such as our third speaker just now, complaining about events in Pakistan and how one individual abused the system. Well, the correction to the abuse of the system is for the democracy to function, as in many ways it is. Our first speaker for the proposition said that democracy is an ideology. It's not. Democracy is a system. Democracy is a way for people to govern themselves. It's not an ideology. Colonialism and empires, that is not democracy. That is a foreign power taking over and ruling the territory of another. It's hard to call that a democracy. Basically, I think in human experience, there's a great struggle. And this is not limited to geography. It's not limited to the geography of Europe or America or Asia or whatever it might be. It's human beings. Human beings do not want to have no freedom. They do not want to be ruled by a small group of others over whom they have no control. They want to be able to build successful and prosperous lives and to take care of their families. They want to live in security, not some knock on the door or some arbitrary force that is going to go after them. These are the aspirations of people. And so throughout human history, the struggle has been for people to try to govern themselves, to be able to choose for themselves what is just and unjust, and to demand governments that provide justice, and to have the ability to choose and change those governments if they feel that they are not serving them. And that is what democracy is. It's the ability of people to govern. They are citizens. The alternative is small groups of people who rule over others. And they treat them as subjects. They treat them as not having equal rights. And they reserve unto that small group an ability to impose their will on others. That's the struggle between democracy and whatever the alternative is, whether it's authoritarianism, totalitarianism, autocracy, you call it what you want. But it's that struggle. And all of the evidence, when you look around the world, all of the evidence points to democracy providing greater justice inside a society because it is self-correcting. You don't like what you have now, you can change it. Yes?
If liberal democracy is meant to inhibit the use of the state's power over individuals, wouldn't you say it's a failure about liberal democracy if it doesn't extend that right to others beyond its own borders?
Democracy is a system of self-governance. I've heard many complaints, and I would agree with some of the complaints that I've heard about the policies of countries towards other countries. The actions, invasion, causing a war, unfair trade practices, whatever it might be. Those are legitimate complaints. But democracy is a system of self-governance. And the argument has not yet been made that democracy is failing. And when you look at the ability to create justice in a society, when you look at the ability to provide for innovation and development and technological advance, when you look at economic prosperity, democracies tend to do better. The example of South Korea and North Korea was given earlier. Also, I'm a little surprised at the proposition because some of the language strikes me, in contrast to being carefully crafted, I view it as rather loose. There is no such thing as a global South. There are many countries in the Southern Hemisphere, just like there are many countries in a Northern Hemisphere, and they have more things that differentiate them than they have in common. Some are democracies and quite successful. Some are not, and also quite successful. Some are authoritarian and hugely repressive and not successful. And some are democracies that have struggled, but nonetheless still provide in some measure of justice in their societies and opportunity. So I don't see that as a grouping where you can lump everybody together. Likewise, I'm puzzled at the term liberal democracy. Why does democracy have a qualifier of liberal? Is there an alternative? You mentioned Taliban democracy. That's not democracy. I feel more conservative than liberal, but is there conservative democracy? And is there non-democracy democracy? I think it's unnecessary. Democracy is a system by which people choose and change governments and have the agency of citizens. And the alternative is small groups of people who rule over others as subjects. And I just want to pose it here because this was the proposition of the House. The House that we are standing in suggested that democracy has failed the Global South. Well, it's an honor for me to be here. It's my first time in the Oxford Union. I had the honor of meeting your president, who was elected. And I wonder how many of you here would suggest that it would be a good idea for the Oxford Union to eliminate the democratic election of its leader and instead have somebody just rule over them for as long as they would like. And if you don't want that, what does that say? That says that democracy is good for us, but maybe not for those other people. Maybe they're not ready for it. Well, I would call that the soft bigotry of low expectations. I think democracy is the one system that lifts people up. By nature, human beings are flawed. Human beings do bad things to other human beings. Human beings make bad decisions. Human beings cheat. The best system for governing that kind of humanity, which we all are, is a democracy that can correct itself time and again. So I submit to you that you join me in voting against this proposition.